Welcome back. I am incredibly excited to jump into today's deep dive with you. We have a source today that is really it's going to challenge how you think about authority, belief, and your own intuition.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we are exploring this highly personal, uh, deeply candid transcript from a YouTube creator who goes by the name The Blind Muslim Yogi. And when I tell you this material is packed with profound, just paradigm-shifting insights, I really mean it.
It truly is a heavy hitter.
Yeah.
We're essentially looking at a text that serves as a massive flashing warning label about the dangers of outsourcing your own critical thinking. I mean, it is a deep exploration of the human desire for certainty.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Our mission today is to really explore that razor-thin line between genuine, open-hearted spiritual devotion and, well, dangerous blind obedience.
Right.
We're going to unpack the specific warnings this creator shares about what happens when you follow charismatic spiritual gurus or even massive ancient religious doctrines without actually using your own personal discernment.
Before we wade any deeper into these waters, though, I do need to pause and set a very firm ground rule for our discussion today.
Yeah, this is important.
Because the source material we are unpacking touches on highly charged political and religious topics. Specifically, it includes the creator's deeply personal critiques of Islamic history and religious doctrine. Because of that, I want to be absolutely clear with you listening. Neither of us is taking a side here.
Exactly. No sides.
We are not endorsing, and we are not condemning, any of the religious viewpoints, historical claims, or spiritual practices mentioned in this text. We are strictly serving as impartial guides. Our only job today is to report and analyze the exact claims and concepts presented in the source material so you can weigh them for yourself.
I am really glad you laid that out. We're just the messengers exploring a really fascinating text today, and it really operates on two drastically different scales of blind faith, doesn't it?
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, we have this deeply intimate, almost heartbreaking story of a single 80-year-old woman.
Yeah.
And on the other, we have a sweeping analytical look at the historical foundation of an entire major world religion.
Yeah.
But what is so brilliant about this text is how both of those vastly different scales ultimately point back to the exact same psychological trap.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with that intimate personal scale. The creator shares this incredibly vivid story about a female client of his. She's around 80 years old now, but the narrative actually starts way back when she was just 22 or 23.
Right, a lifetime ago.
Literally. So
Oh.
she attends this massive, very public religious festival. And while she's there, she undergoes an initiation ceremony by a highly charismatic guru who represents a specific yogic organization. The creator refers to this as the Satit method.
Right, and for those who might not be familiar with that terminology, sativ essentially refers to a direct transmission of spiritual energy from a master to a student. And the physical details of this specific initiation are absolutely crucial for understanding the 50 years that follow.
The details are wild. During the ceremony, the guru steps up and places his hand directly on this young woman's forehead. And the text describes a literal, forceful transfer of power, like a massive flash of energy that just floods her entire system.
Wow.
The sensation is so overwhelmingly intense that she actually collapses to the ground. She is completely unconscious.
What's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism that springs shut the exact moment she regains consciousness. Think about it from her perspective, because she had this undeniable, profound physical experience.
I mean, literally passing out from a single touch.
Exactly. Because of that, she subconsciously bypasses all her rational filters. She immediately attributes absolute infallible authority to this guru.
I can completely see how that happens. You feel something that powerful, you just assume the person wielding it must have all the answers. Plus, the text notes she was already heavily influenced by certain Hindi religious texts she'd been reading at the time.
Which primed her for this.
Exactly. These texts explicitly stated that a guru is the literal representation of God on earth and therefore must be obeyed implicitly. The logic is, whatever the guru says, that is exactly what God would say. So you combine that deeply ingrained textual belief with a shocking physical knockout, and she is instantly locked into a lifelong commitment.
And what does he tell her to do?
The guru gives her a traditional mantra and some daily instructions for meditation and breath work, a routine known as a sadhana. And that's it. The hook is deeply set.
This is where we really need to pause and look at the danger of that hook. The creator is urging us to recognize a very dangerous conflation humans naturally make. This guru clearly exhibited what felt like a miraculous, localized burst of spiritual power. But experiencing a singular, intense, emotional, or energetic event does not guarantee that the person's long-term teachings are actually effective.
Right.
Power does not automatically equal profound wisdom or a sound methodology.
That distinction is the ultimate tragedy of this woman's story, because she takes those daily instructions and she guards them with her life. She gets married, she raises a family, she lives her entire life, but she never once abandons this daily
It's this
practice.
absolute loyalty.
Absolute. The creator actually first crossed paths with her about 40 years after this initiation event. He took one look at her routine, recognized right away that her daily practice was totally inadequate, and he warned her. He even offered to teach her a more effective way.
I'm guessing that didn't go over well.
Not at all. She flat out refused to change a single breath of her routine. Her guru had given her those specific orders 4 decades prior, and she was only going to follow her guru.
Wow.
So fast forward another 15 to 25 years. She is now around 79 or 80 years old, and the situation has become dire. Spiritually, she has made zero progress. Physically, her body is completely failing her.
Which the text details pretty graphically.
It does. She is severely ill, sleeping downstairs on a couch because she literally cannot summon the strength to walk up the stairs in her own home. The text notes that for 3 months, she has barely been surviving on a tiny daily bowl of porridge just to get basic nutrition. She fully expects that this is the illness that will finally end her life.
It is a devastating picture. Over half a century of rigid, unyielding loyalty, resulting in complete physical and spiritual stagnation.
It's incredibly sad. But this is where the creator finally steps back into the picture. He visits her and offers to use his own energy healing methods on her. And this time, facing the very end of her life, she is desperate enough to accept help outside her guru's mandate.
And the turnaround is shocking.
Unbelievable. Within just a few days of his healing sessions, she starts to recover. Within a week, she regains the physical strength she had before the illness. She starts eating solid food normally again. But even more amazingly, she reveals to him that for years she had been suffering from constant, debilitating dizziness and drowsiness. After his healing, all of that completely vanishes.
Which tells us that her decline wasn't just standard aging. It was a deeply rooted, energetic, and spiritual block that her rigid, daily practice had entirely failed to address.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text actually breaks down the empirical math of why her original practice failed so miserably for 5 straight decades. Remember that revered guru who knocked her out with a
Right.
gut? Well, the profound daily method he prescribed her was simply to do 3 rounds of alternate nostril breathing. That was it. The creator points out that doing merely 3 rounds of that breath work does absolutely nothing for the human system.
It barely scratches the surface of physiological change.
Exactly. To see any actual progress, to truly shift the nervous system and build real spiritual energy, the text states you need to do a minimum of 18 to 21 rounds, and you need to do it 4 times a day.
Which is a huge difference.
Huge. Giving someone a prescription of 3 rounds is the spiritual equivalent of telling them to do 1 push-up a day for 50 years and then wondering why they aren't ready for the Olympics.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. It is such a stark contrast between theatricality and substance. The guru provided this massive theatrical flash of power, but he handed her a completely empty prescription, and she spent her entire life faithfully filling that empty prescription. The tragic takeaway for the listener here is that following a charismatic title literally cost this woman over half a century of spiritual progress.
Over 50 years. Imagine looking back at that lost time. But the silver lining is that once she was healed, the blinders finally came off. She was open to trying the creator's methods. After she started doing the actual substantive practice he recommended, she finally began making real, tangible progress.
Which perfectly highlights the creator's alternative philosophy. He states that he has spent 46 years teaching and testing methods across decades of students. His ultimate conclusion: he advocates for completely simplifying yoga into non-sectarian, superstition-free methods.
He just cuts through all the noise.
He does. He deliberately strips away the heavy religious dogma, the guru worship, and the rigid traditions because, in his words, intelligent energy knows exactly what to do.
I love that concept, intelligent energy.
It fundamentally changes the dynamic. It implies that true spirituality shouldn't be a confusing, arbitrary riddle you have to solve to appease a master. It doesn't need complicated rituals. It just needs proven, substantive techniques that align with human physiology to bring fast, verifiable results.
But what makes this entire transcript so compelling is that the creator isn't just pointing fingers from a high horse. He doesn't look down on this 80-year-old woman for falling into that trap because he openly admits that he fell into a very similar trap of seeking certainty in his own life.
Yes, the narrative pivots beautifully here. We move from the client's story into the creator's own paradoxical journey.
To understand how a spiritual teacher falls into a trap of blind faith, you really have to look at his early milestones. This wasn't someone who casually picked up meditation on a weekend retreat. He states that he attained his first samadhi levels by the time he was just 19 years old.
We should probably define that for anyone not deep into yogic philosophy. Samadhi is essentially the highest state of meditative consciousness. It is the point where the ego, the individual self, completely dissolves and you experience total unity with everything.
Right, it's massive. On top of that, he experienced multiple Kundalini awakenings, which is described as an intense uncoiling of dormant energy at the base of the spine that rushes up through the body. He had these profound, undeniable, multidimensional experiences that absolutely convinced him of the existence of a god. He experienced a direct connection with an overwhelming energy of love and bliss, a state he refers to as bhakti.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, achieving those states sounds like the ultimate goal. But he notes a very real downside. Reaching those intense, multidimensional levels of consciousness so early in life made him feel, as he puts it, freaky in normal society. It alienated him from everyday human experience.
You can't exactly talk about the dissolution of your ego around the water cooler at the office, and he was a busy guy. By the time he is 38 years old, he's a successful entrepreneur running a business. He has spent 28 years delving into heavy, complex, esoteric philosophies, and he is just exhausted by it.
He just wants a break.
Exactly. He decides he doesn't want to advance his consciousness into these intense, subtle levels anymore. He just wants a simple, normal life where he can run his business, raise a family, and have a very straightforward way to worship and feel that bhakti connection to the divine.
It is incredibly relatable. In a world that is loud, chaotic, and demanding, who doesn't occasionally crave a simple, unambiguous set of rules. Just tell me what to do, how many times a day to do it, and let me feel connected.
And for him, that simple path was reverting to Islam about 20 years ago. He looked at the daily structure of the faith, specifically the rhythm of praying 5 times a day, and it felt perfect. It offered that direct daily connection he wanted without asking him to perform exhausting esoteric rituals or dive into heavy mystical philosophies. For a while, it felt amazing.
But that intense desire for simplicity became its own kind of blindfold. Just like the 80-year-old woman was blinded by the flash of the guru's power, the creator admits he was blinded by the appealing, comforting structure of his new faith. He candidly acknowledges he didn't actually have a deep historical knowledge of the religion when he chose it.
Right.
He just wanted the peace it promised. But when he finally decided to pull back the curtain and study the underlying doctrine deeply, that illusion of simple certainty completely shattered.
Which brings us to the second, much larger warning in this text. And as a quick reminder to you listening, the historical critiques we are about to explore are the creator's own personal discoveries and conclusions that he shares in his video. We are simply walking through his analytical thought process.
Exactly. The creator starts investigating the foundational claim of his faith, that Islam is the religion of certainty, pitched as the last and final religion with absolutely no errors. But as he digs into the texts and the history, what he finds instead is an endless sea of internal arguments.
He is shocked by the sheer volume of disagreement. He points out that despite having a central text in the Quran, there is massive historic disagreement over its interpretation and over the recorded traditions of the Prophet. He specifically highlights the huge factional divide between Sunnis and Shias.
Which is a very well-known historical split.
It is. For those who don't know, this is a divide that started as a historical disagreement over who should succeed the prophet, but over centuries it morphed into incredibly deep theological divides. The creator notes how extreme this division gets, mentioning that some Sunni scholars go so far as to label Shias as polytheists, claiming they aren't even true Muslims because of their practices surrounding visiting the graves of revered figures.
That's a serious accusation.
It is. He looks at this vitriol and thinks, this isn't certainty. This is chaos.
And that internal division is what pushes him to dig even deeper into the historical origins. He starts looking for a bedrock of empirical scientific proof to anchor his faith. And that is when he hits what he considers a massive, insurmountable historical roadblock.
Yeah, he drops a major historical bombshell in the text here. He claims that he recently discovered, just a month or two before recording his video, that for the first 200 years after Prophet Muhammad supposedly lived, there is absolutely zero scientifically verifiable accepted written record.
Wow.
Nothing that is empirically accepted by the secular scientific community regarding the Quran or the Hadiths, which are the records of the Prophet's words and actions.
Wait, 2 entire centuries with zero written records?
Right.
How did the foundational texts even survive that?
According to his research, he emphasizes that for 2 whole centuries, the religion was purely maintained through oral tradition.
Oral traditions are notoriously volatile. It's essentially playing a multi-generational game of telephone across a massive geographic empire.
Exactly. He points out the exact same thing. He says when you rely purely on word of mouth for hundreds of years, you end up with people arguing completely opposing views. He describes the historical records as one group saying light, the other saying dark, one saying black, the other saying white.
To contextualize why this bothered him so much, he makes some direct historical comparisons to other major faiths. He argues that Christianity has traceable, verifiable written records going right up to the time of Jesus. He notes that Hinduism has ancient books and records that are scientifically verifiable up to 4,500 years ago.
Right.
But he claims his own faith has this glaring 200-year gap of zero written record, making it, in his purely logical and scientific view, the religion with the least clarity regarding its actual unaltered origins.
And what makes this realization so profound for the creator is that he isn't just reading skepticism from outside critics or secular historians. He actually gets validation from the very top of his own sector of the faith.
That is the part of the transcript that really makes you stop and think.
It's a striking detail. He talks about a private conversation with a highly respected scholar, the actual chairperson of a major board of Islamic scholars in the U.S. The creator respects this man deeply for his honesty, and this chairperson essentially admits to him that because of over 1,000 years of factional fighting, political battles, and that oral tradition gap, they aren't truly 100% sure of the doctrine's authenticity.
That is quite the admission.
It is. They are essentially just following what they feel is most likely correct, but they have to admit that a lot of it, or even most of the surrounding traditions, could be incorrect. So what does this all mean? We have a massive global religion pitched to converts as absolute, flawless certainty, yet top scholars internally admit they are basically making their best educated guess after a millennium of telephone and factional wars.
This is where the creator shifts from a historical, academic analysis to the devastating real-world cost of this blind doctrine. Because if this were just an academic debate about carbon dating old manuscripts in a university library, it wouldn't matter that much to the average person.
Right. It would just be history.
But the creator is watching everyday people make life-altering, permanent sacrifices based on the promise that these unverified doctrines are absolute certainty.
The human fallout he describes is just heartbreaking. He is watching people in his community leave their original religions, abandon their childhood homes, and face furious ostracization from their own families. And they are doing all of this because they are converting under the belief that they have finally found a flawless, error-free truth that demands their total allegiance.
And the most painful specific example he gives revolves around the destruction of long-term marriages.
Yes, he specifically warns about marriages of 15 or 20 years just being completely broken apart overnight. Why? Because new converts are being told by religious authorities that, according to the doctrine, they can no longer remain married to or even be intimately close with their spouse unless that spouse also converts to the religion.
It's an ultimatum.
It is. If the spouse refuses to convert, the new believer is ordered to leave them.
This raises an important question, and it is the exact question the creator is begging his audience to ask themselves. Is any doctrine, especially one lacking verifiable historical certainty and built on centuries of human debate, worth destroying your family over?
And that is his ultimate passionate plea. He notes that he is recording this video in the year 2026. He says, look, we are living in the 21st century. We have unprecedented access to historical records, scientific consensus, and global information. Before you put your heart and soul into a life-changing decision, before you sacrifice a 20-year marriage or isolate yourself from the people who love you, use that access.
Do the research.
Look deeply into alternative opinions. Keep an open mind. Do not let someone else's claim of absolute certainty become your personal blindfold.
It's a really powerful call for discernment. And looking at the transcript as a whole, it ties the two halves of our deep dive together perfectly.
It really does.
Right.
Because when you zoom out, whether you are a 22-year-old woman collapsing under the supposed miraculous power of a single charismatic yoga guru, or you are a 38-year-old entrepreneur seeking the simple, comforting structure of an ancient, massive religious institution, the core danger is exactly the same.
Right.
Outsourcing your critical thinking to an authority figure, no matter how eloquent they are, how old their book is, or how much spiritual power they seem to possess, is incredibly dangerous. Discernment, your own innate ability to question, analyze, and trust your gut is your greatest asset.
And to you, listening to this right now, it is entirely natural to crave simple answers.
Yeah.
The world is increasingly chaotic. Wanting a trustworthy guide or a straightforward set of rules to bring you peace and a sense of connection is a deeply universal human desire.
Totally natural.
But what the creator's journey and his client's tragic story shows us is that true learning and true spiritual growth cannot happen in the dark. It requires an open, questioning mind.
Absolutely. You cannot trade your critical thinking for comfort because the cost is just too high. It can cost you decades of lost time doing an empty practice, or worse, it can cost you the loss of the people you love most.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today, building on everything the creator shared about his philosophy of simplified, effective practices. If true spiritual energy is as naturally intelligent and intuitively healing as he claims it is, would it ever actually require us to surrender our own critical thinking and isolate ourselves from the people we love just to access it?
Man, that is a question worth carrying with you long after this is over. Thank you so much for joining us and exploring these heavy, complex, but absolutely crucial concepts today. Keep questioning, keep your eyes open, and we will see you on the next deep dive.